And let's talk about Seth Rollins and Triple H. Triple H comes out, and hell of a damn entrance. Riding a damn, it's basically a three-wheeler. What do they call those? A cycle?
Yeah, I called it a motorcycle because I didn't have time to look up what changes in the title when there's two wheels on the back. But
yeah, so
yeah,
I mean the entrance was awesome.
Yeah,
and then here comes Seth Rollins, and he's got this torch, and then so he holds a torch in the air, and then he touches it to the stage, and then flames go towards the ring, and it kind of catches on fire according to the video monitors that are taped everywhere. I didn't get it because, I didn't know if it was symbolic of him setting the place on fire, which obviously he didn't. It was a video monitor. Or it was, Triple H was passing the torch to him by, doing the honor. So, I mean, there was mixed message there for me before the match even started. Here comes Triple H with this badass entrance. And then here comes Seth, the babyface, coming back from MCL injury or whatever it was. And I think, as you mentioned me before we started recording, he had just been in the hospital with the fever. Is that correct?
Yeah. The reports that he was hospitalized to get checked out to get basically cleared or get whatever hydration he needed, or I don't have a ton of details. I know that he posted a video I think about 3 days before Mania in his hotel room, just saying, man, I am sick, the timing couldn't be worse, I felt a cold coming on, now I got a fever, I'm skipping a workout, I never do that, and it sounds like it got worse afterwards. So I mean, I think there was some fear this match wouldn't happen, or that it would have to be something different than what it turned out to be if Seth was just physically not able to go. So yeah, I mean, he didn't want to miss 2 WrestleManias in a row, and it's almost like the stress of that led to tempting fate, but he made it. But I mean, I am not surprised, knowing Triple H and following his career from day one, that he got a bigger, better ring entrance than his babyface opponent. I mean, Hunter's into his character. He's the guy in the director's truck or the video editing booth, always making sure that he's got a say-so on his video. He's a meticulous manager of his image when it comes to how he's portrayed on even video game marketing for their partners. I mean, Hunter, he works. So he talked on the media conference call for NXT that I was part of a couple weeks ago. He talked about every minute of every day's planned this whole year, because he's got to get back in shape and to have a match and look the part. And he did look the part when he was posing at the end of that ring entrance. And I'm like, and the music's playing, like, that's months of pain and dedication and all the little things he put up on Twitter and Instagram about, when you don't feel it, you still got to do it. And I just feel like he had to feel really good about how he looked and the way that he carried himself, because he still looks and carries himself like a star when he's there. The problem is, and that's what you're getting at, Steve, it made Seth look like a chump because there's nothing he could do to compete with the pomp and circumstance of Hunter's entrance.
Man, to go back to what you were saying, Triple H looked like $1 million. Holy smokes, his diet. I mean, I get on his Instagram account and see him working out at midnight, 1, 2 o'clock in the morning. Yep. So he's not missing any workouts, but he looked like $1 million. The badass entrance. Okay, now to your point, when you say, he's controlling his image and he's very meticulous in the detail. Okay, he's got this badass entrance with the cycle, badass loud pipes on it, mag wheels, Stephanie's on the back. Okay, you got to think, because I knew going into this match it was time for him, Jesus Christ, pass the torch, no pun intended, because Seth had one, but I knew, just my gut feeling was, this is the time they're trying to get this kid over as a baby. Rollins is somewhat over. He's not all the way over, not by a long shot, and I don't mean that in a bad way. That's just being honest. But man, as meticulous as he was in planning, or whoever creative was in planning his entrance, I really thought they dropped the ball in planning Seth Rollins' entrance, because I don't think that Seth Rollins was sitting at home in Iowa thinking, hey man, maybe, if I get this knee well, maybe when I walk to the ring I'll carry a torch and I'll put it on the ground and kind of light the ring on fire.
Yeah,
I don't. Maybe he did think of it. Maybe it's his idea, but I don't think it was. And I think if you're trying to get this guy over, and Triple H is going to do the favors, which he did, clean in the middle, I would have made his entrance a lot more badass than that, because the kid could use some help in that department.
Yeah, I mean, part of what gets a babyface over a heel, and this goes back to even Miz, it's not being the coolest one in the match, not being the badass. And Triple H had a badass entrance, and he was the cool one. He was larger than life. And yeah, I mean, Seth failed in comparison. I mean, if you go back to 1993, what Seth did with a torch in his hand, he touches it to the rampway, and then the rampway, the fire travels down the ramp, and then the ring apron lights up with flame. I mean, it's like, that's cool. Problem is what came right before it was visually and audibly much more over the top and stimulating. So yeah, I mean, it's sort of unfair. But like I said, I'm not surprised. Seth's been trying to get healthy and get his knee in shape, and Hunter's had months and an unlimited budget and a non-full-time ring schedule to, as he always does, try to make his ring entrance at Mania something that's memorable, and he did.
But in thinking about it, let's move on, and we'll talk a little bit about the match. But just in regards to characters, when you say Stone Cold, you know who that was. The Rock, you know who that was. Undertaker, you know who that is or was. Triple H, you get it. And there's that imagery. You got Motorhead singing your song. I mean, the badass. And when you just say Seth Rollins, or if you want to say Seth freaking Rollins, I still don't have a sense of what or who this guy is.
Yeah.
And so that's rest on Seth Rollins' shoulders as an individual, as a performer, to define or create that, as well as the WWE, because I still don't get a sense of what kind of personality he is. If you go back and say, well, he's not like The Rock, electrifying, or he's not like Stone Cold, this anti-authority, or the dead man. Okay, well, what is he?
Because he's not Shawn Michaels,
but he doesn't have to be. Yeah, he's not Shawn Michaels. Yeah. But look at another guy who was, if I dare say, a little introverted, but obviously he had an ego. Bret the Hitman Hart. Not a larger than life personality, but the genuineness or whatever of his character was, he was the hitman, and he was a badass. The excellence of execution, the best there is, was, ever will be. Bret wasn't an over the top guy. He pretty humble and a very quiet individual outside the ring. So in many regards, kind of somewhat like Seth, although Bret's an entirely different animal. But there's a case of a guy who's not, like a showy kind of guy, very conservative, but just a highly defined gimmick, a badass gimmick, and a world-class worker. So, Seth needs to work on this.
Yeah, I agree, and I don't think freaking counts.
No, it doesn't. So let's get into the match. Let's get into the freaking match.
Yeah. Yes. Authenticity, by the way, that's what Bret Hart exuded.
Thank you.
Yes.
But, yeah, I mean, he was a real deal. Second generation. But, the match, here's the thing. You go into a match with a knee injury, it only makes sense to work that knee.
Yeah.
And therein lies the problem, mobility. So I thought that as meticulously, as hard as these guys work, I know how much thought Triple H puts into these matches. Love the finish sequence involving Steph towards the end. There was also a back and forth go-between of Seth and Triple H, which lasted, about 30 seconds. But just that match kind of plodded along because you're working a wheel and it never got a chance to get into second gear, or at least the next gear, from a cadence or speed change. Yeah. And so it just kind of plodded along. There were some good moments there on the table, some interesting stuff, some impact stuff. But I thought the match kind of struggled to really keep the people. And, you're talking about Seth coming back from 103-degree fever. 99% of the population doesn't know this, so you're just based on what you see. So I can understand that the guy was a little bit flat and was just lucky or fortunate or gutsy to be able to perform. But just from a match standpoint, it didn't grab you. And he's not over enough. They didn't make that entrance cool enough, and one entrance isn't going to make you before a big show. But there's the match was what it was. Had you cared deeply for him, that match could have worked. And you can work a will and have an effective match, but you have to be more invested in that babyface than they are, because he's relied on his sequences and his athleticism to carry him, to take him to the next level. He'll have to get more character development. But let's stick back to the match. Your thoughts after I've elaborated as much as I have.
Yeah, I mean, 26 minutes on a show that, counting the opening bell, you have about an hour and a half of pre-show with 3 matches, and then close to 4.5 hours of a main show. So you're talking 6 hours of wrestling. And to go out there and tell a story when they could have told this story, and like I thought the first 4 minutes, first 4 or 5 minutes were really good. Last 4 or 5 minutes were really good, and then there was that 15 minutes in the middle that I think should have been shrunk down to 5. And then I think we're talking about a 16-minute match that was hellacious. It was fast-paced. It was start to close an adrenaline rush, and they never lost the crowd. And WrestleMania, perhaps more importantly than anything I just said, ends 10 minutes sooner. And that, to me, is respectful of Undertaker and Reigns. It's respectful of Goldberg and Lesnar. It's respectful of everybody who followed this match, that they didn't go excessively long needlessly. Like, if this was the main event for a regular 3-hour pay-per-view, give me 26 minutes. And you know what? Even though it was a little slower in the middle than it should have been, or ideally would have been, still, I think people go, that was a really good main event, a little slow in the middle. But I think there was almost a resentfulness of how when things slowed down, the crowd's already been there for 4 hours, and they're looking forward to 3-4 big matches that are left. And it just wasn't time for this kind of marathon show closer. And that's what this seemed to be. And I think that's where they kind of swung and missed a little bit in terms of forecasting. I get working over the knee and wanted to sell it. It felt a little indulgent.
Yeah, again, man, when you're working a knee, and obviously Ric Flair made a living out of doing that. Normally he'd pick a preliminary body part, pick it apart, it's preliminary heat, and then in the course of the shine, then finally go to his main heat, which was centered around that knee to try to get in that figure 4 leg lock. But Rick had the innate ability just to always keep his guy firing, keep his guy alive. I thought, Seth was selling his ass off trying to get that sympathy. He died a little bit out there. The match was long. I had heard from people that were there in attendance that the temperature and the length of the show was starting to wear on people as it got deep in the show. And here we are. And again, to have this type of match, you really have to be invested in that babyface for this type of formula to work. I think hindsight being 2020, if just looking back, to your point, this match could have been 10 minutes shorter, if anything. 6 to 8 minutes shorter, or say 10 minutes shorter, but bang, 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 bang. I mean, they started off throwing the fist just like Chris Jericho and KO did, but, let Seth just beat the trash out of him for 4 to 5 minutes and totally dominate that guy, light that crowd up, get him, and have him beg off, have him on the run, get Steph involved a little bit earlier, and then boom, set your heat in, cripple that knee, and then saw down on him, boom, then go home or involve your tables. This is me nitpicking and going back, but it just dragged out a little bit too long. And these guys, ton of respect to Triple H, respect to Seth Rollins, but the match just it could have been so much more, but not so much more time.
Yeah, and part of it too is Seth was able to do so much on that knee before the working over the knee by Hunter with the mat work and putting the leg in the chair and stomping on it. Seth did so much on the knee before that it almost made me think, well, the knee's not that bad. And I know they wanted to have that hot opening few minutes, a DDT on the table, we're going to give him a lot of energy, get him into the match, and then slow it down and work over the knee. But to me, it almost ruined the gimmick that Seth had a bad knee, because it was like a Mad Libs where it was like, blank spot, do a big move, sell your knee like you just re-injured it. And they did that like 8, 9, 10 times. Seth did that, a big move and then clutch your knee in pain. But if you come back and keep doing big moves, you start thinking, well, that must not hurt that much, or it must not be that hurt. So I almost felt Seth got in too many of his spots, and it undercut the notion that he was vulnerable. So then the beating down of the knee sort of felt like a normal thing rather than cruel.
But along with that, my takeaway from that was the kid's well enough to walk, he's well enough to run. I don't need to see sequences right now. This is about the whole thing was the hatred between Triple H and Seth. One person was gonna, either you win, if you lose this match, you're done. So this was the time, instead of sequences or athletic ability, you want ass whooping, and so you go on offense by bouncing that heel around, or at least chasing him. And he can't be the badass now. He rode down in the trike, but now he's in backpedal mode. Bing, bang, boom. Steph gets involved. Excitement, Wade. Excitement.
Yeah.
Pop the people. Yeah. Whip ass. Don't prove how good of an athlete you are right now. Nobody cares.
Right.
They want you to extract revenge. You don't need to be fancy in doing so. Fists, feet, just punches, knees, anything, and ass whooping. But reaction from the heel, big eyes, holy smokes, boom, bumping all over the place, use the wife, bam, some kind of bump there. Excitement. But anyway, I knew Triple H was going to, put the kid over towards the end because they're trying to make the kid. I thought Triple H he obviously did the right thing. I saw it coming, but man, just the lackluster entrance, just the fact that Seth hasn't developed that character as much as he needs to, try as hard as they did to execute it, fell a little bit short.
Yeah. Yep.